Diddy like shooting people, blowing up cars.
Yeah.
Is he this gangster that behind the scenes is that him? Or is that people
Shout out to Wendy Williams.
And what's really going to be interesting is the parade of celebrities who we expect to be mentioned and or called into that courtroom. You know, people who we hadn't heard about prior, like Mike Myers, you know, Austin Powers, Mike Myers. Why is he getting called? Why is he on the witness list? That'll be fascinating. And then, of course, there are the no-name, quote unquote, women who are going to have to find every ounce of courage they have.
They said it was just a terrible mishap, a drowning. A random ocean current that claimed one of TV's most familiar faces while he vacationed quietly with family in Costa Rica. But now, only a few weeks later, murmurs echo through a Manhattan federal courtroom, and people are starting to ask, was Malcolm-Jamal Warner's death truly an unfortunate accident? Or was it something far more deliberate, something meant to bury secrets no one was ever supposed to find?
And then what's the stuff that's happening with Wendy Williams? Do you think this is all connection to?
Of course.
And here's where things start to feel cold. Explosive new claims from inside the Diddy trial have blown the lid off something bigger, and now Warner's name is surfacing in a way no one expected, tied to that same powerful circle of elite industry insiders behind Diddy's so-called social empire. But Warner didn't just bump into them at some awards show. He was tangled up deep and maybe even ready to pull back the curtain on something dark. Then suddenly, he's gone drowned in open water with only one unknown man by his side, a man who's now vanished into silence.
They once worked together a long time ago. They're not friends now. They don't like each other. And yeah, 50 has taken every shot, especially when Diddy has been down.
So let's rewind for a moment. July 20th, Playa Grande, Costa Rica. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, 54 years old, steps into the ocean. He goes under. Paramedics work for 20 minutes to bring him back, but it's no use. Cause of death. Asphyxiation by submersion. Case closed. Or is it? Now, sources close to the Diddy investigation are hinting Warner wasn't just another casualty. He may have been a thread someone was desperate to cut because pulling it might have unraveled everything. This warm-hearted TV brother, Grammy-winning artist, suddenly, he's not just a legacy figure, he's a liability. And that flips the script. What makes this even harder to ignore? The timing. Just weeks before his final trip, Warner kicked off season 2 of his podcast, Not All Hood, but this time, something had shifted. His voice was sharper. His words carried weight. In that first episode, he dropped veiled warnings, spoke boldly about exploitation in the industry, and carried the kind of fire you hear when someone's done playing the game. We've managed to navigate the murky waters of child stardom with our souls and dignity intact, he told co-host Kashianite Pulliam. But listen again, really listen, and you'll feel it. The tension, the pressure, the edge in his tone when a man's about to stop hinting and start naming names.
I hate to bring up the sad news, but news did break today of the untimely passing of Malcolm-Jamal Warner.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
And then just like that, he's gone. People close to the podcast say Warner had been sketching out new episodes, ones that dug into truths he'd long avoided, about how young talent is groomed into silence, about how powerful names can hold entire careers hostage, and how even actors with Emmy nominations like Warner himself had watched close friends fall into traps that didn't feel accidental. His podcast was only beginning to peel back the glossy surface to reveal what really hides beneath. And then he entered the water and never came back. So now the question lingers, did that podcast, that truth-telling spark, paint a target on his back?
Yeah.
Blowing up cars.
Yeah.
Is he this gangster that behind the scenes is that him? Or is that people
Shout out to Wendy Williams.
Because here's the strange part. Ask 3 different insiders from the late 90s NBC scene about Warner's connection to the music world, and you'll get the same look. A raised eyebrow and a pause. 1. A former road manager for a major law label swears Warner showed up at more than one late-night gathering at Diddy's Los Angeles compound in the early 2000s. Not a regular fixture, but they're enough to notice. He didn't participate, the source said, but he saw things. He watched. Another insider, a longtime bet producer, claims Warner had privately expressed serious unease about what he called weaponized mentorship, a system that dangled opportunity in front of young talent, only to keep them leashed and controlled. None of that made it into the headlines after his death. But what really sets off alarm bells? The mystery men who tried to save him in Costa Rica. A 29-year-old from Nicaragua. No full name, no interviews, just a quiet acknowledgement from the Costa Rican Red Cross he was hospitalized in critical condition, released without incident, and then disappeared. This man jumps into the ocean to save Malcolm-Jamal Warner, nearly dies doing it, survives, and no one can find him. Authorities say he had no ties to Warner at all. So why was he there?
Early morning swim, he had gone out to the coastline just before sunrise, and a little after sunrise got into the water. Not too many details about what exactly happened once he was in the water, but authorities did end up finding his body actually hundreds of yards away down the shoreline. His body was discovered in a rocky cove. It was brushed up against that rocky cove.
Here's what really stings: no one's asking the right questions. The Costa Rican Red Cross said Warner was unresponsive after 20 minutes of CPR, declared dead on the scene. Case closed. But locals who work along Playa Grande are telling a different story. They say the unidentified man wasn't some bystander who heard screams and jumped in. He was already out there swimming nearby watching, maybe even waiting. That changes everything. And it only gets darker when you look at how quiet Diddy's inner circle has been since Warner's name started echoing through that courtroom. No statements, no denials, just silence, the kind that doesn't reassure, it suffocates. Especially when this entire freak-off trial is dragging skeletons into daylight, exposing how power, influence, and fear molded careers behind closed doors. If Warner saw any of it firsthand, he wasn't just a witness, he was a threat. A man with legacy, with values, with a microphone and something to say.
The judge right now is going through a number of different reasons. Again, very quick reporting indicates that the judge is citing to the defense attorney's own statements during the case that Sean Combs is a violent person, has had violent personal relationships. But of course, the defense said that doesn't mean he's guilty of racketeering. It looks like the judge is now using those statements to say he should be denied.
Let's not forget the video released just weeks before his death. Malcolm on stage in Atlanta, bass guitar in hand, full of life, smiling, engaged, surrounded by fans. That wasn't a man stepping out of the spotlight. That was a man stepping into it, more visible, more present than ever. He had a daughter he adored, a wife he protected, and a legacy he was finally reclaiming. And that's what makes this loss feel coordinated. Drowning might be a natural cause, but motive? That's rarely clean and quiet. Patterns matter. Diddy's legal team painted him as someone who indulged in private, consensual behavior, but the jury didn't buy the whole act. He's behind bars now because those private rooms cross legal lines. And if someone like Warner was planning to speak out, revisit what he saw, or challenge the system still in place, then this accident begins to look less tragic and more strategic. And what about the digital breadcrumbs? Warner's last social posts felt different: close-up shots, reflective captions, and even a repost about artist burnout. Not disturbing, but unusually raw for a man launching a new podcast and planning collaborations with young creatives. It felt like he was bracing for something, or guarding something. Then there's Keshia Knight Pulliam, his close friend and co-host. In her tribute, she called him an angel and promised to look after our girls, a nod to their daughters who'd grown close. But in one quiet Instagram story, she wrote, "I've just needed a moment." And fans couldn't help but wonder, was that just grief? Or was she trying to process something that doesn't fit the official story?
I want to start with alleged victim number 4, who goes by the name Mia. It's an alias. She is one of the people who is testifying where the judge has granted her anonymity. She is on the stand, but everybody in the courtroom has been warned. Do not reveal her identity. do not even give a physical description of her.
One chilling Reddit thread made waves before it vanished. A user claiming to be a production assistant who worked with Warner in early June said Malcolm had opened up about feeling watched uneasy about certain industry faces reappearing. The post disappeared within 24 hours, but not before screenshots were saved. The assistant even named one of Diddy's longtime business partners, someone who, out of nowhere, reached out to Warner this past summer. Someone who once promised him a high-budget comeback. A comeback that never happened. Now, there's a growing belief Warner might have known too much. Maybe he kept quiet for too long, and when he finally decided to speak, he never got the chance. Whether or not these courtroom whispers ever translate into proof, one thing is already clear: they've shattered the illusion. The illusion that this was just bad timing, or just bad luck. Because now, we see the threads, the overlaps, the timing, the buried connections. Warner didn't live like a man afraid, but he died under circumstances that demand answers. And still no one has identified the so-called rescuer. No name, no photo, no press. Just a quiet discharge from a hospital, and a blank space where a face should be.
I'm sorry, I'm just like really, I'm in this moment right now. This is crazy. Sorry. People don't really know how much what it does to you when something that you love is taken from you and thrown away like it don't even matter, and then they move on with their lives and you're stuck. You're stuck during those years. You're still stuck 21 years later.
And now, the questions only get louder, not just about the tragic loss of Malcolm-Jamal Warner, but about the hidden machinery that may have played a role in it. Because if you zoom out far enough, this isn't just about one man drowning in Costa Rica. It's about a system, one that's allegedly gripped Hollywood by the throat for decades. A machine that feeds on ambition, silences truth, and punishes anyone who steps out of line. Diddy may be behind bars right now, but if the allegations hold weight, his empire wasn't the work of one man. It was a network, a carefully spun web. And where there's a web, there are others still moving quietly along its threads. Let's talk about those shadow players, the gatekeepers. Insiders say they operated like a secret syndicate just beneath the surface of both music and film. This wasn't just about power, it was about control. Young talent wasn't mentored, they were groomed. And once inside that circle, the doors didn't open again, they locked, without a sound. Some names haven't made it into court documents yet, but they're whispered on film sets, backstage at award shows, and behind velvet ropes. If Warner tried to unlock one of those doors with a mic in his hand and a rising podcast behind him, then maybe what happened wasn't random at all. Maybe it was a message.
How many people came through his orbit? How many people could this have happened to? And how did he get away with it for so long?
Here's the hard truth few in the industry dare to say out loud. Diddy may be behind bars, but the machine he allegedly helped build is still running. The executives who shared tables with him, the agents who arranged introductions, the lawyers who cleaned up contracts, even stylists and security, many still have their hands in the system. His October sentencing is being framed as the end of a scandal. But what if it's only the beginning? A pilot episode to something far darker. And that brings us back to Warner's final days. Kishionite Pulliam's tribute seemed heartfelt at first glance. But look closer at her words. I just needed a moment. And we got our girls. That doesn't read like simple grief. That reads like pain laced with guilt. The kind of sorrow that comes when you see something coming and still couldn't stop it. Pulliam and Warner shared decades of friendship. She appeared on his podcast right before he died. Did she hear something different in his voice? Did she catch what he left unsaid? Fans are now rereading her posts, not just the tributes, but the hints. The phrase "our girls" keeps resurfacing. And some believe Warner had taken protective steps not just for his own daughter, but for hers too. People close to the family say Warner had become unusually cautious in the weeks before his death. He started canceling events, cutting down public outings, and even hired private security for what had always been low-key gatherings. Those aren't the moves of a man relaxed on vacation. Those are the quiet instincts of someone who felt the walls closing in.
The question is he a criminal? Is he basically akin to a mob boss running several criminal enterprises? And while it's very clear to me he is a depraved, disgusting person, we have to prove that he violated the law.
As pieces of the past began to resurface, one close confidant who requested anonymity claimed Warner had even talked about stepping away from public life entirely by year's end, retreating from the spotlight to focus on fatherhood. If that's true, it points to a man who was preparing not just for a new chapter, but perhaps for someone or something he no longer trusted. And that casts a shadow over his final days, suggesting they may have held more than just podcast episodes and family beach trips. What makes it all more unsettling is the silence that followed. His inner circle has gone quiet. No interviews, no statements. And many who once posted regularly have gone dark since his passing. Even Kishianite Pulliam, long known for her warmth and openness, has kept her words brief and careful. Heartfelt captions, yes, but no names, no details. Just a quiet, deliberate restraint. The kind that feels like it's protecting something. If Warner did confide in those closest to him, and if they now hold pieces of a truth he never got the chance to say out loud, then this isn't just a personal loss. It's a silent alarm, a warning written between the lines.
About the filth that's starting to come out in the early days of the Diddy trial. This, of course, is P. Diddy. Surprise, surprise, he's a creep. Surprise, surprise, he's done horrible things.
What's truly haunting is this. The very same week Warner's podcast teased deeper, more daring conversations about exploitation in the industry, Diddy's legal team was busy filing motions to reduce his sentence. They argued he was being unfairly punished for what they framed as private, consensual behavior. But buried in the prosecution's files were disturbing threads that painted a far darker picture. Coercion, manipulation, a chilling level of control over those closest to him. 2 women testified they were coerced into carefully staged scenarios constructed not for consent, but for spectacle. A security video showed physical abuse. One federal agent called it corporate-level manipulation masquerading as entertainment. Now imagine if Warner knew more than he ever let on. Not because he took part, but because he witnessed it. At parties, through friends, or maybe someone confided in him, trusting that Theo Huxtable would never betray them. But what happens when the man known for integrity becomes a threat to the system? A former producer who worked with Warner on a 2011 sitcom reboot recalled a moment when Warner casually mentioned Diddy, saying, "He's got too many people watching people." At the time, it sounded like an observation. Now, it sounds like a red flag, especially considering some of Diddy's alleged enablers those prosecutors say helped set up these so-called freak-off encounters have yet to face any charges. Not even an ankle monitor. And if Warner held any first-hand knowledge about those names, that's not coincidence. That's motive.
Unfortunately, we're all going to take a disgusting trip to his seedy, awful world. It's the man has no class. He has no kindness in his dark, dark heart. And he's depraved. That's my opinion. This is a depraved, disgusting individual about whom I wish to hear nothing after this trial is done.
Several court watchers have pointed out that Warner's name was quietly mentioned in pre-trial filings documents that were never made public. One paralegal revealed his name surfaced during a metadata sweep tied to digital communications gathered in the investigation. The prosecution has offered no comment, but it raises a crucial question. How close was Warner to the heart of all this? Was he merely on the periphery, or was he about to become a critical witness?
In a court proceeding that has nothing to do with Wendy's career. Moreover, that were made in front of Wendy Williams. If true, that is outrageous because this judge, one, she's not in the entertainment industry, so I don't know where she would get off opining about that and why that's even relevant to her role as a judge, who's basically the judge of the law.
Then there's the eerie behavior of the gatekeepers, the silent unfollows, the cryptic tributes. One veteran stylist who had worked with both Diddy and Warner posted a candle emoji with the words, "Not unexpected, but still hurts." The post disappeared within hours. No names, no explanation, but the silence spoke volumes. And the online buzz hasn't slowed down. Fans are now connecting Warner's final podcast recordings to deeper legal tension. One recent upload contained audio glitches and missing timestamps, sparking speculation that someone may have altered the episode posthumously. Some even claim Warner's personal laptop, recovered by family, contained a list of collaborators he no longer trusted. We haven't seen it, but gossip forums insist the list includes names that could bring down 3 major networks. Which brings us to one chilling possibility. Warner wasn't just collateral damage, he was marked. As Diddy's empire began to crumble, someone may have viewed Malcolm not as a friend of the industry, but as unfinished business. Not because he broke any laws, but because he may have been ready to speak against those who did. And if that's true, who else is on that list? It's a bitter truth. The good guys don't always make it out. The voices we believe in get cut short. And the masterminds behind the curtain, they adapt, they pivot, they wait until the smoke clears, and they build again. So we ask the question no one wants to hear. If Malcolm-Jamal Warner's death wasn't an accident, then who's next? What other truths are still buried, waiting to be silenced? Drop your theories in the comments. And until next time, stay safe, stay sharp, and above all, stay watching.